Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la ya la ya la. Ya la ya la la la. Ya la ya la ya la 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 la. La 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Wow, you are all on time. Thank you so much. Gives us ample time to hear everyone. Our speakers will have 6. Elliot Rosenzweig, Jen Still, Justin Miro, Lori Beth Schwartz, David Wolf, and Sally Wolf. Without further ado, but with a raising of the... Maybe, do you want to just hold it? Do you want to hold it? Or do you want me to raise it? I don't know if it's tall enough.
Shana Tova. I'll let these folks come on in. I think we are all aware of the devastating effects that plastic has on our environment. The numbers are so large, it's hard to get our arms around the scope of the problem. The first commercially produced plastic, Bakelite, was developed in 1907 and is still one of the more common polymers being used today. However, plastic really did not become ubiquitous. Did not become ubiquitous until the mid-1960s. There are 4 characteristics of all plastic. It requires enormous amounts of petroleum and water to produce. It is commonly thought that it will take each piece of plastic approximately 500 years to totally decompose. All plastic, whether manufactured in 1907 or last week, are still part of our environment. And finally, when plastic breaks down in a process called photodegradation, it just means that there are smaller pieces of plastic. Big pieces of plastic are bad. Smaller pieces of plastic are worse. And microscopic pieces are digested and passed along in the food chain, and that is the worst. The Great Pacific Floating Plastic Patch off the coast of California, which has lately been in the news, is twice the size of Texas, and in places is 9 feet deep and weighs approximately 100 million tons. This is the weight of 500 jumbo jets. There are no areas in this world that are exempt from pollution, from Antarctica up to the Arctic Circle. Some may recall the 1958 movie South Pacific. We recall the singing of Some Enchanted Evening in the backdrop of a pristine Polynesian island with palm trees and crystal clear water. In the 60 years since the movie came out, that scene has been replaced with islands that are no longer inhabitable. Because of ocean currents, the South Pacific island, Henderson Island, is the most polluted land mass on Earth. If my youngest grandson, Leo, were to ask me, Papa, if you knew that plastic was destroying the planet, why didn't you do something about it? What would my response be? What would your response be? Would it be to do anything other would have been inconvenient? At the URJ Biennial in December 2017, a seminar was given by Michelle Sterling and Ron Shuloff from Westchester Reformed Temple in Scarsdale. I left the seminar inspired with the realization that we could not be the stewards of the earth as described in Torah and then do actions that harm the earth. It simply did not equate. I watched as our custodial staff at the end of Friday night's oneg piled all the plastic plates, bowls, cold cups, hot cups, and plastic cutlery into the center of the plastic tablecloth and scooped it all up, placed it in a plastic trash bag. I knew that in a few days all that plastic would be in a landfill. After a flurry of emails with Rabbi Tara, we decided that we would attempt to eliminate single-use plastic from temple activities. We knew from the start that going green was going to be a long journey, wrought with challenges, some expected and others unforeseen, a journey that we will all have to take together. The great American liturgical songwriter Debbie Friedman wrote, "And the children shall see visions." It was the vision of Adina Feldman to donate her bat mitzvah gifts that gave us the seed money to start this project, which began January 1st, 2018. We will be the first temple on Long Island and only one of a select few in the United States to eliminate one-use plastic. The basic concept is recycle, reuse, reduce. So what have we accomplished so far? When you walk through our temple, you will now see 48 sorting bins. All the bins are color-coded and they are all clearly marked. They have all been placed in all areas where we gather. This allows us to separate paper, plastic, compostable, and trash. We recognize that there is some education required in knowing whether a white paper plate is going into the paper bin or into the compostable bin, or to recognize that what appears to be plastic cutlery is actually compostable. But I am sure that we will get the hang of it. In addition, we have sorting bins in all temple offices and each of our nursery schools' 9 classrooms. Even our youngest toddlers will learn that they have a responsibility to protect our environment. We have replaced our plastic tablecloths with reusable vinyl tablecloths. We are now using ceramic mugs on Friday night and Saturday morning. We have eliminated all our plastic flatware and utensils and replaced them with certified compostable flatware and cutlery. After the holidays, we will be meeting with our caterers. They will have the option of using our beautiful china and silverware, or if they plan on using disposables, it must be our certified compostables. And most importantly, we have dedicated members of our Go Green team. They stay after the Onegs and Torah study, wipe down the vinyl tablecloths, and wash the ceramic mugs. We meet often as we plan on implementing the next phase or attempting to resolve problems. Therefore, thanks must go to the Go Green team, including Daniela and Gary Weinstock, Lee Kaplan, Randy Weiler, Peter Tufel, Martha Hirsch, Mike Ellman, and Mike Freeman. And to Rabbi Tara, it has been your guidance and your encouragement during these past 9 months that has allowed us to continue on this holy journey. Bottled water has become one of the 3 symbols of plastic pollution. We now consume 50 billion bottles of bottled water in the United States per year. I know these numbers are hard to comprehend, but all you have to do is go to Costco and see skid upon skid of bottled water piled from floor to ceiling. Friends, whether you live on Long Island or in the boroughs of New York City, we are blessed with perhaps the best water in the United States. Stuart Lubert told me that he saw a bottle of water labeled bottled in upstate New York. He called to find out where it was bottled, only to be told that it was bottled in Yonkers. On Sunday, the temple is kicking off our 90th anniversary celebrations with a Sukkot barbecue. The chair of the barbecue is Stan Levine, and the barbecue will be run by our Brotherhood. I am requesting the Brotherhood not bring bottled water, plain or sparkling. We will have plenty of water for all who attend. We hope that everyone sitting here has already signed up for the barbecue. If you haven't, please sign up tomorrow, as we are going to be doing the shopping within the next few days. Plastic bags have become the second symbol of plastic pollution. Although it is true with every supermarket, did you ever notice the shoppers coming out of Best Market with their shopping carts cascading with plastic bags? The first thing the cashier asks, do you want me to double bag it? If that isn't bad enough, it seems like the cashier places each item into a separate bag. So you take all these bags from the cart, place them into your car, and then take them from your car into your home. Worldwide, we are now using 1 trillion bags a year. In the United States, we consume 100 billion bags a year. It is estimated that each bag will be used on average for 12 minutes, but then becomes a pollutant for 500 years. 150,000 sea turtles die each year from the ingestion of plastic bags, thinking that they are eating jellyfish. And finally, during those last dog days of summer, what could be more refreshing than an ice-cold glass of Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks iced coffee? So how much harm can be done by that one little plastic straw? Unfortunately, straws are our third significant contributor to plastic pollution. It is hard to believe, it is even hard for me to believe, that in the United States alone, we are using 500 million plastic straws per day. Because of their size, straws are not readily recyclable, and by and large wind up either in landfills or in rivers and the ocean. As Rabbi Tara Feldman gave us hope with her Rosh Hashanah sermon, I too am going to present you with hope and the knowledge that we, as one community, can make a difference. All is not lost, but we need your help. We need your help individually, and we need your help collectively. When you come to temple, take a moment to make sure that you are throwing your trash into the appropriate bin. As you are running out of the house to attend a meeting or a program, rather than grab a bottle of Fuji water, grab that permanent refillable water bottle. If you are having a simcha, make sure the caterer adheres to our policy and does not use one-use plastic. And when you go to the supermarket, bring permanent shopping bags with you. You may even see a credit on your grocery receipt. Yes, dear friends, there are simple acts that will pay huge dividends. I would like to thank Ron Epstein and the lay leaders who recognize that there are substantial costs associated with this project, but gave us their encouragement and full support to pursue our goals. On January 1st, 2018, we decided that Temple Beth-El would no longer purchase bottled water. On January 1st, 2019, let us be the first temple in the United States to declare that Temple Beth-El will be a bottled water free zone. And on June 9th, 2019, we will stand before this holy ark as we celebrate Shavuot and the receiving of the Ten Commandments. Let us be able to rise as one community and say, Hineni, we stand here as one community dedicated to preserve this planet for our children, our grandchildren, and the generations to follow. May the new year bring good health, joy, and peace for you and your family. Yehi Ratzon.
Is that okay?
Jen Still.
Hello. I'm here to tell you a very small piece of the journey I've been on becoming a Jew by choice. And Tara already sort of introduced me. I've been singing in the choir for these holidays, and it's the first time in many years. I have a very new favorite word for prayer and singing, and it's funny because I've been studying to read Hebrew, read the letters for myself for months. But the song that expresses prayer for me right now, maybe you'll sing it with me. Lie, 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 lie. La 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 la. I've been studying so I could read it myself and make out the words. So I feel really good that I can sing in Hebrew now. And I can't believe that la 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 is the word that means so much to me right now. I grew up singing in the choir in an every Sunday church-going family where I was in the choir with my parents. Here at Temple Beth-El on Friday nights, we sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. But I was raised Episcopalian. We sing all the verses. The language of prayer and hymns, as I was growing up, was often archaic. And the songs started to lose some meaning by the fifth verse. So sometimes I had to ignore some of the words and just focus on my deeper connection through the music. I also read a lot and identified with children's Bible stories back then about Joseph, David, Moses, and the rest, and I really identified with them. And I remember being truly shocked and insulted that I was considered one of those outsiders, a Gentile. As a teen, I still had my own prayer relationship with God, but it tended to be asking for specific help or intervention or a way to relax or calm down. I often thought that prayer's wording was very specific, and if I had the right formula, maybe then the prayers would get the result I wanted. Once I went away to school, and after college, the simple formulas didn't work anymore on the complex problems of the world. The praying that I did started to become less meaningful. The faith that I had started to wear away till it was a shadow. And as the simple answers disappeared, the faith began to slip away as well. I was in a very unformed place. Anything could have happened. What did occur was that I met my husband, Len. We got very serious and had some decisions to make. We had to make a compromise if we wanted to stay together. As our friend Tevye the milkman says, a bird may love a fish, but where would they build a home together? It's true. I finally decided that finding the true trusted partner in life is not something that I could face God and say, nah, thanks, okay, I'll wait for an Episcopalian. I found someone who fit my soul, and I had to embrace that gift. So I had to determine to make it work. We decided that I would commit to practice Judaism, and our home and our family would be Jewish, so that we could live in a single, united faith tradition as a family. But I still wasn't ready to turn my back on my own identity. The person I was at the time didn't have a very active spiritual life that I can remember. First, I was getting a master's degree and then learning to be a mom. Those two things I can imagine required a lot of prayer, but mostly in the style of, please God, please don't let me mess this up. But without practicing very much of a personal religion, we tried to start the habit of Shabbat blessings. We accepted invitations to friends' Shabbat dinners, to their sukkah, and the family members who included us in their celebrations and their seders. Well, the practice started to rub off after a while. The songs by Debbie Friedman really hit me. The prayers that hit me with poetic or translated meaning, very often the ones on the left page, got to me. Part of the beauty of praying with transliteration and the translation is I could bring my own understanding and my own meaning to the prayers, even if my interpretation wasn't exactly what was intended. When we were here in Shul celebrating, especially on Saturday mornings, Rabbi Tara always included in the morning blessings, "Thank you for making me a Jew," or whatever spiritual path I follow. And I think that that included those of us who were sort of on the border of being here. And I got drawn into this community and the TBE orbit, even if I didn't entirely feel inside the Jewish life. When our son started studying to become a bar mitzvah, I got even more caught up in the questions, the learning, the conversations about Judaism. And as I celebrated my birthday that year, I wondered, who do I want to be now? What is this life I want to live? A friend asked me, "Why would you convert? Why now?" And I had to think about it. I wasn't going to choose to become Jewish for my husband or for my child, but it was time to make the choice for myself. I had a chance to decide who I want to be and how to live. So after reading a pile of books and pouring out gallons of virtual ink in emails to Rabbi Tara with questions, answering questions, I was finally able to enter the mikveh about 9 weeks ago. Every part of that experience was amazing and truly awesome. I submerged and I said the brachas, celebrated with some family members, and then I came to services Friday night, and I got to hold the Torah, read a declaration, and I signed my Hebrew name, and I was surrounded by amazing friends supporting me on this journey. It was just an astounding day. The most powerful moment, though, when I most felt the change inside that had occurred, was when I went back to my seat, and it was time to start praying together, and Cantor Vlad led the call to worship. And I joined in, la 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 la, la 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 la. And that's when I knew I was praying as a Jew for the first time. So here I am now, finding that the most meaningful moment in the prayer service occurs in a language beyond words, where English and Hebrew don't matter, just the feeling behind the sound, the act of flinging the prayer idea out into the universe, or making a sound like a shofar, and the feeling without words is all we need. Shana Tova.
Justin Miro.
I sense a bit of a theme going on here. Hello, my name is Justin Miro, and it's an honor to be sharing with you today. When Rabbi Meir asked me to speak at this service, I had to first ask him the meaning of Yom Kippur. Not the literal translation of the words, but the purpose and the process of atonement on this specific day. You see, while I've been a member of Temple Beth-El for 20 years, and I have 3 daughters, 2 of which are here today, who've all become a bat mitzvah here, I was born and raised Catholic. So there's a little bit of a theme here. I'm expecting the next one will be a Protestant up here. The only difference is I am still a Catholic today, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. So I'm hoping to share with you a little bit more about me and how my spiritual journey brought me to the Bima today. So my first brush with atonement was at 7 years old. After a few years of Sunday school, this was my first confessional with Father Murphy back in Livonia, Michigan. I pulled back the black velvet curtain. I sat down on the hard-worn seat and awaited the priest to appear behind a screened divider. The rules were simple. You had to tell all of your sins. You had to promise not to do them again, and then you had to ask for forgiveness. Frankly, it was a little scary back then, and 40 years later, it's still a little scary. For Catholics, we were expected to go to confessional at least once a year, but also expected to recognize our sins every single day. That seemed like a tall order for a second grader who only was really interested in fishing. Today, it seems like modern society has lost its sense of sin, or at least its ability to admit it, without getting political here. Regardless, I continued attending church with my family throughout high school, not because I really believed in the sermons, but really because it was expected of me, and frankly, my mother really was happy that I went with her. I was secretly looking forward to college and sleeping in on Sunday mornings, and maybe distancing myself a bit. My father, he attended the University of Notre Dame, and he told me this wasn't going to be hard. So my father, he went to the University of Notre Dame in hope that one of his two kids would also attend. Well, we went there as a family every fall to take on a football game and go to services at the cathedral on campus, which is awe-inspiring. I believe that my father is still confused as to why I never even applied to that school. Instead, I attended the University of Michigan, where I studied engineering. There, I embraced hard science, as well as what my parents called liberal science, such as the theory of evolution. Yep. Well, this conflicted with Catholic views, sure enough, especially something called the creation of man by God and the emergence of the original sin by Adam and Eve. Needless to say, my parents were not really happy about those conversations, especially while also paying my tuition bills. But they began to realize I was forging my own path. So after college, I moved to Japan to get a little further away, and I worked for Toyota. Well, look, not a lot of Catholics in Nagoya, but there are a lot of hot springs. Okay, so why is that relevant? Well, there's a Japanese ritual that every night the Japanese would take a very long, very hot bath before going to bed. And I was told some did this to relax, some did this to reflect on the day, and some did this to repent for their transgressions. Well, to me, these reasons are somewhat all of the same and led to me touring throughout Japan in search of the most obscure hot springs. I also started practicing kendo, or Japanese sword fighting, which, as it turns out, is more about meditation than actually wielding a blade. So after a few years, I returned to Detroit with Toyota, somewhat confused about religion. Yes, I still attended church with my family on Christmas and Easter, but I was seeking something that was more inward, something with a more sense of community. I continued my kendo training, but like most young people at the time, I just became very busy with work. Reflection took a back seat. In fact, this back seat lasted almost 15 years, during which time I moved from Detroit to New York. I went to business school. I worked on Wall Street. I got married and started a family here in Great Neck. I met my wife Elizabeth in college. She was born and raised here in Great Neck with a very strong Jewish identity. We decided that this strength would guide us in raising a Jewish family here. She didn't ask me to convert to Judaism, nor did I ever feel any pressure to. I was just looking for a community. What I didn't know what I didn't know was how much this community would influence me. Ever before having kids, we joined Temple Beth-El. It was really to hear Rabbi Davidson's topical sermons, which personally I found very informative and educational, much more so than, frankly, Father Murphy's homilies. Later, we enrolled our kids in Temple's nursery school. Some wonderful teachers that are here today. I would say it was much less to really become more Jewish, but really just to know that our babies were safe and secure. Only later, when the kids began Hebrew school, did we start to nurture those relationships with the clergy and administration here. However, truth be told, I left most of that up to my Jewish wife, figuring she was better equipped given her upbringing. Besides, I was very busy at work, again, and would spend time with the kids when they got older. Then, shortly after my 40th birthday, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's why I brought this. All right. I spent most of that year on chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and frankly, sleeping. I have very little memories from then, other than what life was like before versus afterwards. My wife, who was a physician, was by my side the entire time, for better or for worse. I don't recall praying much, but I do recall many long periods between my treatments, reflecting on my actions and pondering my future. My kids, although very young, not fully aware of what was going on, were a very calming presence and constant source of awe for me. I realized then that I had really missed out on a lot of their growing up, but now I had a chance to change that. So over the next 5 years of remission, I reassessed my career path and began to strategize a different trajectory. As a Wall Street banker for 15 years, it was kind of hard to change a formula that seemed to work. Regardless, I kind of reset my priorities on what was really important: my health, my family, my friends. Plus, I also really like spending time with my dogs. Go figure. During this time, my oldest daughter, who is at college today, she became a bat mitzvah right here in this chapel, providing me with a chance to reflect on her connection with Judaism, which was much different than my connection with Catholicism. Why was her experience so different? Was it just me? I began to pay much closer attention to my other daughters when they became bat mitzvahs here and with a very similar experience. Maybe I was onto something. I left Wall Street 3 years ago, and now I work from home. I still work hard, but not constantly. I have less certainty over my next paycheck, yet I have more control over my life. My routine involves seeing my kids each morning, walking the dogs, having lunch with friends, coaching soccer, and squeezing in some work around this schedule. I have an amazingly supportive wife that I now see more often as well. So with this newly found free time, mostly spent here in Great Neck, I've been searching for a way to better connect with the community. Over the last year, I joined a group of men at the temple, many of which are here today, and we all have a very similar entrepreneurial experience. And we've formed this group, this forum, really designed by Rabbi Meir, that encourages encourages all of us to share our private thoughts. Now, just to be clear, this is not a religious gathering, and I had never really joined a group like this before, but I was really curious to see the connections that could be formed by our common thread of Temple Beth-El. To my surprise, despite very different backgrounds, we quickly felt a comfort level that fostered productive discussions. Who would have guessed? These were Temple members I had seen at services for years, but never even knew their names. Now I have a distinct connection to them, the Temple, and the community. So for that, Rabbi, thank you for opening my eyes to people right in front of me. Which leads to my final thoughts about Yom Kippur. On this day that marks the end of the High Holy Days, or as some would say, Yamim Noraim. How about that? Otherwise known as the Days of Awe. While this phrase figuratively asks for forgiveness, I prefer the literal interpretation of the positive feeling of awe that has increasingly shaped my beliefs. From the times that I was challenged as an engineer to the cultural shock I experienced in Japan, I respect both the fear and the wonder of the unknown. This feeling was dormant until my cancer recovery and has only recently blossomed. Now I see awe in everyday activities, the people and the places around me, the joy of my wife and kids, and even just walking the dogs. Thank you.
Lori Beth Schwartz.
Okay, I'm going to throw this out the window. It's a hard act to follow. So the rabbis asked me to speak about how I first started to read from the Torah. And so I just want to say that reading from the Torah has been one of the most inspiring and rewarding experiences in my Jewish life. I like to say, and I actually said at both my kids' B'nai Mitzvahs, that love can transcend generations and can transcend even blood, that love is stronger than blood. Being an adoptive family, we know that firsthand every day. And, the love that we feel for the past generations and the people who are no longer with us also proves that to us. So the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because I feel that reading from the Torah was a gift that was given to me by my father-in-law, and he didn't even know it because it was given to me after he passed away. It all started approximately 12 years ago when my nephew, Ben, was having his bar mitzvah. The portion that was right before Ben got up, what's it called? The Torah portion right before the bar mitzvah. It has a Jewish name, which I don't know. The maftir is usually reserved for someone, a big honor for someone important in the family. And so my father-in-law, of course, was going to read that portion. On the day after Rosh Hashanah, he unexpectedly passed away, very unexpectedly. And he'd been sick for a long time, and it was just in a part where he was doing great, and everybody was so excited, and the bar mitzvah was 5 weeks away, and he passed away. So everybody was thinking, who is going to do the reading? Who is going to do the reading? And of course, the rabbi said, don't worry, I'll just get somebody from the community to come and do the reading. This was a conservative temple, and in the conservative temples, unlike the Reform temple, the conservative temples always had people, community members who could step in and read from the Torah. So I thought, and my sister-in-law thought, that it was very important to have somebody from the family to show Ben and the other boys that there was continuity in the family and there would be somebody within your family who could step in. So David said he would do it, my husband David. I said, David, you have to do it. And he said, okay. So, of course, 1 week went by, and next week went by, and I kept saying, come on, honey, you have to start learning it, and somehow, between the grief and everything else that was going on, the shivas, he never started to learn it. And about 3 weeks later, I told Susan, my sister-in-law, that I would do it. This was after a discussion that we were all trying to figure out who else would do it. And I said, well, look, if there's nobody else that's going to do it, I'll do it. So she went to her rabbi with the idea, and this was a conservative temple in Syosset. And he said, forget it, Susan. She will never, never be able to do it. So just forget it. I'm going to have, the community member do it. Well, that's all I had to hear. So I don't know if it was, the challenge of it that really pushed me, because at the time I barely read Hebrew, really. It was, 12 years ago, and I was really suffering through the whole thing. So I said, you know what? You tell him I'm going to do it. And I got the recording, and I got the text, and I went about trying to learn a Torah portion, which, by the way, was probably triple as long as the one that I did this morning. And I was having a lot of trouble. And we only had 2 weeks left. So who did I go to? I went to my dad. And I said, Dad, you have to help me learn this. Now, this was very special to me in a lot of different ways. But the most important thing was that when I was, I'm going to say it, 48 years ago, when I had my bat mitzvah, girls didn't read from the Torah. It was unheard of in our temple for girls to read from the Torah. We had our bat mitzvah on Friday night, and we sang. I sang Al Shar Al Sheikh. That was my bat mitzvah song. And we said a little, speech, and that was the end of that. And, of course, there was a party. But, reading from the Torah was something that was never even considered by anybody way back then. So it was a big change for me to go to my dad, who grew up very religious, and say, Dad, help me study Torah. And here I was studying Torah with my father. And I was having a really, really hard time remembering the melody. And, of course, I didn't read trope then. And my dad did something very interesting. He studied it with me. We actually read it. He explained it in English, and we studied what it meant. And he started to teach me the words. This word means this, and that word means that, and this sentence means this. And we talked about the meaning, which really helped me to remember what it was that I was chanting. It was incredible that actually learning it helped me to memorize the melody and read the Hebrew. 2 things that I had never done before and that were very foreign to me. So the day came, and there I was. And of course, it wasn't just reading from the Torah right before Ben read. It was my mother-in-law standing here, all my cousins and everybody, my husband, all the boys, my nephews, my nieces, everybody like this, weeping. The entire place was weeping loudly, and I'm up there trying to do my first Torah reading. So it was, I did it, and I did pretty well, and looked the rabbi right in the eye and shook his hand. And he did tell me afterwards, you taught me something today, and thanked me for it. So that was a source of pride there. My dad was there watching, and he was proud. And of course, everybody, it was meaningful that somebody else, that an aunt or an uncle, somebody else from the family could carry on the tradition for Ben, and so that was very exciting. The second time, actually, that particular rabbi, told me that he learned something from me, and this is not really relating to the Torah, to reading the Torah, was when we had just adopted my son, Reuben. And Reuben was 3 months old when he came home. And, of course, we were thrilled to the moon and back that we had a son, and it was after years of trying, like a similar journey of, regular pregnancies, and, this was alternative, and here we had a son, and we were so excited, and we wanted to have a bris. And the rabbi, that same rabbi, we hadn't joined to Beth-El yet, and we were still conservative and had joined the conservative temple here. The rabbis all said, oh no, you don't do a bris in that case. You just very quietly take the baby to the office, and we just, draw a little drop of blood, and you do a brit habaya, and, there's no party or no celebration. Well, we were devastated at that. I said, what? This doesn't make sense. Here's one of the most joyous moments in our life, and we don't get to celebrate it, to add a Jewish boy to. It just didn't make sense. So on 9/11, I had been at a bris, actually, Illa Kagan's grandson's bris, with Dorothy. Is Dorothy here? Dorothy Greenbaum. And Dorothy, I remembered, I spoke to Mickey, my good friend, Mickey Kagan, and I said, I'm so upset, and I don't know, I thought we were going to have a bris, and now I'm not sure what to do. And she said, call Dorothy Greenbaum. So I called her, and she said, absolutely not. Start inviting people. Order the bagels. You're having a bris. And, of course, we ended up inviting that other rabbi to the bris to be, I said, you know what, I'd like you to be our witness, one of the witnesses. So that was the second time at our home after the bris that same rabbi said, I learned something from you today. So that was very, very meaningful. But getting back to the Torah, I had repeated the Torah story at a fourth grade getting to know you, parents getting together of the fourth grade religious school here. And Rabbi Meir followed up afterwards. Do you remember this? You remember this. And he came to me and said, would you like to read from the Torah again? Because I hadn't read from the Torah for years. That was the only time I had done it. So I said, wow, I don't know, yeah. So he said, we're going to have a women's service in the spring, in May, and I'd like you, we don't have any really community member who reads from the Torah. At the time, I don't think there was anybody who read from the Torah, community members. It was only the clergy. So we made the date for the women's service, and at that service, I read from the Torah. And then the rabbi asked me again, would I read at the high holidays? And that was great to stand in front of the entire congregation, and I had to learn a whole new portion. It actually, that one portion from that women's service was the portion that we're going to read tonight, V'yadaber, which is repeated. You read it once in the spring. It's Leviticus, and it's the rules that we live by. You read it once in the spring, and then you read it on Yom Kippur afternoon. So when he asked me to read on Yom Kippur afternoon, I actually knew that well, he asked me to read the top part, and then he asked me to read the bottom part. So I learned the two different parts, and then we filled it in, and then I learned the middle. So it was very good that it was the same. It was meaningful that it was the same portion. And I remember one time, today it was beautiful. There were so many people standing up there the last few days. The last few years, we've had so many Torah readers, but I remember standing up there all by myself and throwing down the gauntlet. I remember saying those words, I'm throwing down the gauntlet. I invite anybody else from the community to read from the Torah. That it was a very great experience. So I was so happy today when I was standing up there, and there were so many people. And another thing with my dad, I just didn't want to forget to mention, he's very active in his temple in Shelter Rock. And one year after my daughter got bat mitzvahed, I said to him, Dad, would you be willing to come Rosh Hashanah to our temple? So we could all three read from the Torah together, 3 generations. And he said, yes, I would love that. That would be very meaningful. And so that was really a big road for him to travel from growing up very Orthodox and having women not have any part of it, and all the way to coming to a Reform temple for Rosh Hashanah services and being the only man of 3 generations, of 3 people reading from the Torah, because my daughter read and I read and he read. So that was also a very beautiful moment. So I thank Rabbi Meir for encouraging me and making me do it the first time and starting something great at this temple. Thanks.
So calling up now David Wolf, someone I encourage you all to get to know, leading our religious school, a seasoned educator but new to us, and love his energy. And yeah, so this is a great way to start a conversation with him.
Shana Tova. Really amazing people, wonderful stories. Thank you. And of course, as consistent, I was invited to speak. Whatever you want, don't worry, a couple of minutes, not a big deal. And then people are giving these wonderful, wonderful stories. And my understanding, of course, was my journey was explaining how I came to here. And certainly not in a very specific practical sense, Cross Island and all of that, but how did I get to this position in doing what I'm doing? And it really began, I think, when I look back to my bar mitzvah. And not in that meaningful sense, like my bar mitzvah was such a wonderful, wonderful thing. Can you hear me? Thank you. But because I didn't want to do it. Having run the program at Rosh Hashanah and again this morning for some of our students, and parents saying, how did it go? In that kind of shaky voice, say, oh, they were much better than I ever would have been. And in fact, that was the case. I said to my mom, I'm not doing it. And my mom, being my mom, said, okay, don't. And she meant it, which put me in a very difficult position. Am I going to follow through? What did I really want to do? And in thinking, do I or don't I thought, why would I do it? Certainly wasn't because the learning was so valuable. In fact, I was one of those kids. Our family was not affiliated. And so I was just getting lessons from the rabbi and having my bar mitzvah. And it turned out I wanted to do it for a particular person. I did it for my granddad. I loved my granddad very, very much. He was not a pious man, not even particularly spiritual, but he was, to me, what Jewish was. And it mattered to him. I think we do a lot of things because it matters to people that we care about and people that we love. We want to make them happy. We want to make them proud. One of the things I did today in the programming, I asked the older kids to consider. We talk about the book of life. This is what we're all about. This is our tremendous image. The book of life opens, the book of life closes. And I wasn't so concerned with what that meant, but I said, think about the book you would write. What would the book of your life be right now? I said, what would the title be? My life as an astronaut, my life as a dancer, my life as a basketball star, superhero, it doesn't matter. And I made them sit apart from one another because too often we belittle one another. It's one of our gifts as humans, I think. I said I didn't want anybody looking at somebody else's title and saying, oh, you want to be a dancer, you want to be this, you want to be that. I wanted them to be able to write it. And I said, once you have your title, you have to dedicate your book. Because a good book always has, I dedicate my book to. Who are you going to dedicate your book to? And also, why? I said, nobody's going to see it. I'm not collecting it. We're not sharing. This is all for yourself. Although it would be nice if you shared it with the person you were dedicating your book to. So I don't know what they wrote. But I do know that they started to think and appreciate that we're not in this by ourselves. And many of the wonderful things that we do, and we do a lot of wonderful things. And I'm very grateful to be in a community that does remarkable things regularly, and we have wonderful models in doing that. I love our rabbis. And Cantor Vlad, he's not a rabbi. And as an adult, I mean, it's easy to say as a child, I'm doing something for somebody else. But as an adult with a family, I do a lot of things because of my kids, and not in that sense that I want my kids to do this or that. One of the things that I do is I am a volunteer medic. I volunteer in an ambulance. And I am an officer in Long Beach Fire Department. And I went into New York City on 9/11. It was a very, very surreal process to get into the city. There were marksmen all around Kennedy Airport. It was very strange. But I got there, and I went to one of the triage centers. And I was thinking the entire time, don't make any mistakes, and make my kids proud. That, I was very conscious of that. Actually, I didn't say don't make any mistakes. I said don't screw up. Sadly, of course, what I had hoped to accomplish by going in was not what was going to be able to do. And as a side note, a digression, because all of our journeys always have so many digressions, yes? I became an EMT, I became a medic, because I had served as a trustee in Atlantic Beach on the South Shore. I was a village trustee. And I don't know how many of you have ever been in any kind of public service or done things like that, but I used to sit at village meetings and go home and feel soiled. There was just nothing nice about it. People weren't pleasant. I used to go home, my kids were very young then, and I'd just stand in their doorway to watch them and feel that cleansed me somehow. But there was an upside to those meetings. The EMS department gave a regular report, and I said, now there's something you could do that people won't get mad about. That's a good thing to do, which started that process. Of course, people still sometimes get mad about that. But what I really came from all this is my journey is not solely my journey. None of our journeys are our own. Reminded me, I met a rabbi once who was talking about our patriarchal narratives. Abraham gets a lot of press, right? Abraham gets a lot of press. Jacob also gets a lot of press. Isaac was thinking about killing his kid. Or Abraham was thinking about killing his kid, was going to die. That was his high point. And the rabbis talked about, so why do we hold Isaac in that same esteem, that same level of respect? And it's because he is that transition, that cog, that chain, that link that allows these magnificent people to continue, our tradition to continue. And in fact, Abraham might have been a start. Well, he was the start, so he doesn't count. But Jacob was also part of that continuation. So for my journey, obviously my grandparents. What defines me is who I am, my parents, my family, my kids. I'm enjoying this journey. I feel I'm along for the ride as often as a participant, but I am very grateful to be at this point in the journey, to be enjoying it with you, starting it with you, and being part of this very, very wonderful community, which I knew was wonderful from the moment I walked in and is astonishingly impressive by the voices I've heard. Shana Tova, thank you for having me.
About a month ago, I attended a spiritual workshop with 12 other women. We began by sitting in a circle and, one by one, each of us was invited to introduce ourselves and announce our presence with the same sentence. I am Sally, and I am here. My position was 2/3 of the way through that circle, so 8 others spoke before my turn arrived. And as they did, from almost the very first person, I felt tears forming in my eyes and, shortly thereafter, dripping down my cheeks. The statement was a simple truth, yet simultaneously felt incredibly complicated, not because I wasn't here in that moment, but rather because of the tremendous fear it forced me to acknowledge that I might not be here next time. In other words, I cried not because anything was wrong in that moment. In fact, quite the opposite. I had just had a best case PET scan merely a week before, and I was about to spend 9 hours in what I knew would be an incredible introspective workshop. So I cried not because anything was wrong in that moment or that day, but rather because when I continued that already complete sentence in my mind, it went something like this. I am here, but. I am here, but I am immensely scared that my metastatic stage 4 incurable breast cancer means I may not be here tomorrow, or at least not for as many tomorrows as I would like. I am here is a simple yet powerful phrase, one that ties us to the present moment and to everyone else with whom we share it. We are here today on Yom Kippur with ourselves and with one another, individually and collectively, raising our voices in prayer, reflecting on another year gone by, revealing our truths, repenting for our wrongs, remembering those we have lost, and requesting that we be inscribed in the book of life for the year to come. More than once, our prayers invite us to commit to showing up in this new year with the Hebrew word Hineni, which literally translates to here I am. Here I am, ready to enter this new year in service, to use my unique gifts to rise up when I am called. Here I am in our prayer book. I am here from that circle. 3 short words that, no matter the order, led me to ponder a relatively big question. What exactly does it mean to be here? Not just literally physically here, of course, because to some degree that's the easy part. But how many of us are also truly, completely here in every sense of the word, going through our lives fully present in whatever the here of the moment? I recently spoke at my business school reunion about life's twists and turns. I was invited to speak 2 months before our reunion, when it seemed cancer was firmly in my past, but by the time the long-awaited weekend arrived, I learned that it had both returned in my breast and also spread to my hip. I wouldn't be 100% healthy at my reunion, but that needn't stop me from being 100% present. And by speaking, I wasn't merely living my truth. I was also sharing it, neither for pity nor for praise, but simply because that's where I was in that moment. Cancer has taught me that the best thing that we can do for ourselves and for those around us is to show up in any moment in our truth with our hearts fully open. Somehow early on in life, we become accustomed to saying I'm fine, even when we're not. Think about it. How often when asked, how are you, have you said I'm fine, when really you're not? It's easier to say we're fine, but creating a meaningful life isn't about choosing the easy answers. Being honest with our here, however difficult, gives us the opportunity for real connection we might otherwise lose when we live behind the pretense of fine. And if we want not merely years in our lives, but also life in our years, and really life in our heres, I believe connecting with others is the most surefire way to get there. As it turned out, my reunion speech didn't just let my classmates into my journey, but it also led them to invite me into theirs. I heard stories that ran the gamut of what it is to be human, because that is what my class is, a collection of 360 humans. There were stories of love lost and love found, of triumphs and betrayals, of successes and failures, of diagnoses and cures. When we're truly here in every capacity, it invites others to do the same. Saying I'm fine when we're not builds walls, and the most painful walls of all are the ones we build between us and the people we love most. When it somehow doesn't feel okay to say I'm scared because we're trying to be strong for those we know are just as scared because they love us so much. My cancer was initially the same as my mom's, until this spring when mine came back and hers 29 years later thankfully never did. Suddenly it wasn't exactly what my mom had. It was worse. It is worse. Even though my prognosis is good, it's still uncharted territory for my family and for me. Before now, everyone I've known and loved with cancer has had one of two outcomes. They've been cured or they've died. The concept of chronic cancer is a journey I haven't witnessed in another, and therefore a journey I struggle to trust is possible, despite what my doctors have told me. I'm scared, terrified actually, but still here. We don't always get to choose to be here in the way we wish we could, illness-free, pain-free. I don't get to choose to not have cancer, but I do get to choose gratitude for the gifts that have come alongside the challenges. Even when life hands us difficult cards, it often still hands us moments to truly cherish, beautiful moments that may not have happened if everything were truly fine. I am grateful, for example, for having the opportunity to share with you all today, for the amazing medicine I have and my body's ability to tolerate it well, for my family being by my side or in my front row every single step of the way. And I am especially grateful for dance, which has been my biggest source of healing, and for the fact that while my body is moving, which I've never stopped doing throughout this ordeal, I am constantly reminded of how alive, of how here I am. I have barely missed a single dance class throughout my illness. I danced with surgical drains. I danced mere hours after completing my first chemo. I danced the day I had my head shaved, and almost exactly 2 years later, the day I learned my cancer had returned. In each of those moments as I was, not more, not less, and even when my body couldn't move the way my heart wanted it to, my incredible teacher was there to remind me that I was fully there in all of my truth, and that alone was something to be celebrated. During my birthday class in May, she played a song called Magic. I danced my heart out, twirling around the room with balloons in my hand like a child, to lyrics about finding the magic not simply in the extraordinary moments of our lives, but also and especially in the ordinary ones. As the song goes, I've been waiting for a magic moment, but maybe they're all magic moments. Could it be a magic moment now? And baby, it's a magical, magical life when you can find magic in every day and every night. I believe the key to that magic is in the here. We find and feel magic when we let ourselves truly enjoy a moment, and we can only really do that when we're fully present in it. Devices down, eyes up, arms out, hearts open. It's easier than it sounds, and if you spend a little time with a child, you'll realize it's not a skill we need to learn so much as rediscover. Kids are incredibly present. My sister has 3 children, the older 2 are toddlers, and whenever I play games with them, if I ask, where's Ryan, or where's Alex, I get back a vibrant, loud, giggling, here I am, Auntie. And there they really are, not simply standing in front of me in body, but also smiling, big, arms wide open, wanting nothing more than to share that moment, because for them, that's the moment in which they're fully living. If we live our lives looking backward, be it reminiscing or regretting, or if we live our lives merely looking forward, whether full of hope or full of fear, we miss the opportunity to connect with ourselves and with one another. Look inside you. Look around you. Take account of what you're feeling right now in this ordinary yet extraordinary magical moment, and let us enter this new year being here in every sense of the word. Shana Tova.
Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. See you downstairs at 3 for Yizkor.